Pod. Pod. Whereabouts am I? I'm in Manchester, just in a place called Sale. How about you?
Margate.
Margate, oh, right, nice.
London's trendy Margate.
I was going to say, yeah, I've heard of a few things going on there. Libertines Hotel and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're literally just around the corner from me. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, there's an article today in the press about Pete Doherty living in France. A few not generous photos, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely piled on the pounds in the last year. I haven't seen him for about a year because he's always around town, like getting pulled around by his huskies on his grifter. But yeah, I guess he's just gone to France and lorded it up. Absolutely ballooned. Fair play to him. He looks like he's having fun.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Are you from down south originally?
Well, actually, I'm from Uxbridge. I was there till I was about 8 or 9, and then we moved to Bournemouth, my family. I lived there till I was about 18. Then I just moved to Southampton, went to uni, moved back to London when I was about 23, something like that.
Yeah, Uxbridge, is that right on the end of the Piccadilly line, is it?
Yeah, technically it's not London, but I tell everyone I'm from London. Because I want to be cool. Yeah, it's right at the end. It's at the end of the line. It's kind of when I was christened, Kevin Keegan's daughter was christened right after me because at the same time he was playing for Hamburg and it was the nearest, so he flew over and got a christening and got back on the plane.
All right. So what, he was like stood behind your parents almost kind of thing?
I think we were stood behind him.
Right.
waiting for them to get done. Using all the water. I can't remember it, to be honest. I think I was about 2 months old.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, thanks for doing this, mate. Appreciate it. Like I said, Guy Apple was the one who messaged us about you, actually, saying,
love Guy.
So yeah, you must have a decent relationship with him already, I guess.
Yeah. We knew each other from like he's a photographer when he was just everywhere. When I was kind of everywhere. So and then I moved to New York in 2011 for about 3 years, and I was right around the corner from him. We just hung out. We both support Arsenal.
Okay, right.
Get up super early in the morning because all the games are on. Obviously, most of the games are on at like 7 a.m. there. So we get up early and go to the pub that was happening to be showing it and just watch the games. We'd often lose. Tim Wheeler was out there at the same time as well. So we called ourselves the Zombie Gooners. So we just turned up zombified in the morning. Have like 3 coffees and 3 beers, and I just wander around for the rest of the day.
Yeah. A guy told us a story about. I think he said he was in Texas, and because we're Hull fans, he's saying he was wandering around Texas looking for a place to watch FA Cup final one day, and he stumbled across like some Arsenal supporters club that were watching the game. But it's a bit of a sour spot for us, that one. So.
Oh, I was there. I was in the ground at that one. Yeah, that was good. Sorry about that. Blame Santi Cazorla.
Yeah, bit of our goalkeeper as well, to be fair.
Yeah.
Just gives an idea of your background and how you ended up doing what you're doing, basically, in lighting.
I mean, it's a long-winded story, I guess, but I went to uni in Southampton because it was the only place that accepted me, and ended up. Well, actually, I went to college before that in Hampshire, Brockenhurst, and there I met Jamie Reynolds, who went on to start Klaxons. This was in '96, and we ended up hanging out together. We ended up working at the same telesales kind of place. We both got sucked in by the same advert promising £5 an hour, which you never ended up getting. And then, so I went to uni in Southampton, and then Jamie ended up hanging out with us quite a lot and living in our kitchen. And we ended up moving in together. We started working at a record shop that had just opened up in town. This was after I got my degree, which I have never used since. And Jamie was basically, we started the shop with this other guy who was like owning the shop. And I made friends with a local band called The Delays, who just got signed to Rough Trade. And they got booked for a tour supporting Clear Lake. Remember them?
No, I remember the Delays. I don't remember Clear Lake, though.
Clear Lake, they were amazing. They were kind of a little bit psychedelic, folky, couple of lads from Oxford. Really cool. And so we went on tour supporting them. The Delays asked me to come on tour with them, selling their T-shirts for them. And obviously being like 24-year-old lad, making no money, kind of like to go on tour with your mates around the country, it sounded amazing, as it was. It was brilliant. I just set up a merch stall every night. We'd go to charity shops and buy all the crap we could find and then get the band to sign it and sell it on the merch stand. Bit of a markup. But if you could get away with that these days. But it was amazing. We just kind of toured and I was getting 20 quid a day or something. But it was just, I was living in a house where I was paying about 30 quid a month rent. So it didn't really matter. I was rich. And after a while, I was kind of thinking I didn't want to do merch all my life. Obviously, it was a good job in that, but I kind of wanted to do something else. What were the options? I could be a guitar tech or tour manager or something. And then one day we were all in the van driving to the hometown gig from Southampton as well. They were in the back of the van chatting about the gig and they were saying to each other, oh yeah, Mike's going to do the lights tonight. And something kind of clicked in my head and I was like, hold on, why don't you ask me to do your lights? I know all your songs. I've watched your show for the last 6-7 months. I can flip a few faders up and down. So they're like, yeah, okay, cool. Tell Mike he's off. So I turned up, did the merch, did the lights for their show. It was about 7 or 8 kind of just what we call par cans, just like the static kind of bulbs. And there was a strobe on a light switch on the wall. And I was hooked straight away. And after the gig, I was like, right, I'm not doing your merch anymore. I'm doing your lights. And they're like, oh, you're doing the merch and the lights. So I did that with them. I think I was with the Delays for about a year and a bit. And then Greg, who's the singer, amazing singer, he's got amazing kind of falsetto, whimsy, dreamy kind of voice. He lost his voice and the tour got cancelled. We lost like 2 months of work and I had nothing else to do. So I went on NME.com and the first story was the Subways announced UK and Europe tour. And it was exactly the dates that I'd just been kind of cancelled. So I found the Subways website because I quite liked them. I emailed their manager, whose email was on the website. And I was like quite cocky. And I was like, hey, you guys need a lighting designer? I'm your man, you know? Give me a shout. But I didn't hear back from him for about, it must have been a month or 6 weeks or something. And then I think we're having a barbecue in my back garden. I got an email and it was from him and it was saying, hey, Ed, this is Ben from Subway's manager. Can you meet us tomorrow for a gig in Devon? I was like, shit. Yeah, okay. So I got the train and met them, got on the bus with them at Welwyn Garden City. It was my first time properly on a tour bus and we drove down to this festival. It was something like Boardmasters or something like that. It might have been a university ball. Anyway, I did their lights for that show and they liked it. And then I got the gig and toured with them for 3 months, kind of just still making everything up as I went along. I never had any kind of training. So but with the Delays, it was even, we were doing the kind of what you call the toilet circuit, right? Where it's all kind of the 100, 200 capacity venues. And I didn't have a clue. I was turning up at venues just like well, no one really knows about lights until you get into it. And I was just kind of winging it and making mistakes. And I've watched a few shows back that I filmed back then and they were awful. I was really bad, but I got away with it and kind of just developed it from there, I guess. And yeah, it just kind of spiraled. Did the Subways, the Kooks, ended up supporting them on tour, and I got pally with them on that tour. Ended up touring with the Kooks for that year after. That was for their first album when that blew up. And then just kind of went on from there, making it up as I go along. Still am.
Yes. And is it the type of job you can, like you say, you're learning on the job? Was there anyone that you kind of looked to for advice? Were you kind of seeking out to learn the ropes from anyone else, or just kind of doing it as you went along?
Yeah, in the early days, it was each venue's in-house lighting technician. I'd always, because every venue, as we say, has a different lighting rig, and I would just watch them and get them to kind of show me what's what and what works. And it was kind of just, it was just kind of learning on the job, which I think was probably the best way to do it. I did end up getting a job in a lighting warehouse in Southampton because the woman doing monitors for Delays runs a lighting company with her husband. So they took me into their warehouse and I got a kind of year's experience in there learning how to fix lights and breaking stuff and putting it back together and polishing mirror balls and all that kind of thing, which was helpful. I wouldn't want to go out without that. But yeah, it was good. It was good. It was amazing fun to just kind of, for that job to come out of nowhere. I didn't even consider lighting as a thing until the first day I did it. I just didn't. I've been to so many gigs from when I was a teenager, but I never once kind of thought about the lights. And then it's basically all I've done ever since.
Do you find a lot of people in similar jobs are kind of had a similar path to you, or do people, directly go for that job and get the qualifications they need, kind of thing?
Some people got into it by getting a job at a venue and being like the in-house person there, and catching onto a few bands as they pass through. And some people study for it. Some people go to uni for it. Some people come from more of a design side of things and then come into lighting as a designer. Some people, the work experience, I don't know. Everyone's kind of different. Everyone's got their own kind of story. There's no set way of doing it, which makes it so cool because there's all different people with different, everyone does lights differently and everyone brings something different to the table. And the main thing you've got to have really is like the musicality. You've got to kind of have an understanding of how music works. I've been in a few bands and I was in a band with Jamie for a bit and I wasn't good enough to be in a band. So I become a roadie like most roadies. You need to kind of be, I always say follow the drummer, like follow the drums, look for the drums where they're heading, because you need that to be able to kind of structure a show and structure the way you program a song. If you don't have that musicality, it kind of shows because it just looks like a bit of a mess.
How is it working with the bands? Like, will you get some that have a real idea of what they want and some that leave it to you, kind of thing? Is it different with each band?
Yeah, it's completely different every band. Some bands just leave you to it. Some bands are involved from the start. Some bands, most bands just trust me with what I can come up with, but it's all often always planned in advance, like well in advance before you get to the first gig. They'll see what's going to be happening, and I try and make everything as clear as I can in advance to how it's going to look, so there's no surprises. I mean, that's not something I did earlier on in the days, and I was a bit of a mess. I lost a few gigs just because I was just out of my depth, basically, and I wasn't pre-planning. But I've learned a lot through my mistakes, which I made early on, and I'd like to think now I kind of don't leave much margin for error. You use a lot of computer software to provide lifelike visualizations of what you want to do, and you basically just need to spell it out as clear as you can. But yeah, most bands are pretty cool. I'm working with Declan McKenna at the moment, and I'm in a WhatsApp group with him and his manager and his tour manager. I'm just flying ideas over and back, and we're developing it by doing that, which is the first time I've used WhatsApp to do that kind of thing. Normally it's like loads of emails or meetings and stuff. But with this kind of thing, you can just send them ideas and they can reply going, yeah, that's cool. Let's do that. Yeah. But everyone's different. I like it. It's fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the technology aspect. Obviously, I imagine when you started, it might have been relatively basic. Like, how much has it changed over the years?
There's always been CAD, craft and design software where you can draw stage plots and even do kind of basic looking, what we call renders, which are like images of the show in action, computer generated images. But the technology's got better and better over the years. I only started using it about 6 or 7 years ago. I would always get other people to do these drawings and stuff for me. And before that, I just drew it on paper because I didn't really need to. But when you start working with bands that are bigger and with more technically advanced shows, you need to use this technology. But now I use software called Capture, which is a Swedish-based company, and they're really helpful and cool. And you can plot the whole show out. I can just sit at home all day tinkering on my computer and drawing the stage out and doing the lights and plug it into my lighting desk and create a show at home and program it all in advance. And it's great fun. It's like I've always said, doing lights is kind of like playing video games. My mum often says my shows look like the computer games I used to play, like Tetris and stuff, which is handy. He's my biggest fan.
Yeah. So where do your ideas come from? Do you kind of talk about preparation? Do you sit down with the songs and just kind of maybe sit down with the software at the same time and kind of see what happens maybe?
Yeah, exactly. I do try and listen to the music as much as I can to get it kind of soaked into my head. Sometimes ideas pop up to me right away. Yes, it's a good process. I enjoy it. I just kind of don't try and force it. Try and get as much information out of the artist to kind of so you're in the right direction that they want to be in as well. And it's also a lot to do with the kind of limitations of the tour. So if you're doing a tour where you're doing like little smallish venues and then a massive London show, you're obviously not going to fit that London show's lighting rig into any other venue. So you have to design the show based around it being modular. And yeah, you just kind of, there's a lot to take in when you're creating a show. But the idea is to dream big and then kind of, work it down from there.
And what's like the most specific request you've had from a band, do you think?
I don't know. I had one, I won't mention a name, but I had one singer who didn't want me to use any steam. And we don't use steam anyway. We call it haze. So I didn't know what she was talking about, but I did.
Okay, so is that your department? Is it the kind of the smoke kind of aspect?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay,
take care of that. Specific requests, I don't know. Can't really think. Worked with so many bands that have kind of had ideas, but it's more about reining in crazy ideas that the bands have. Like one band's tour manager once suggested that the stage set would be a giant whiskey barrel that would slowly kind of look like it was filling up throughout the show, and you just kind of have to go with it and just like forget about it conveniently and do something else.
So you get a bit Spinal Tap sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of that. It's fun when you work with someone who's not really got any experience of designing shows and they just come up with all these crazy ideas, or they want the show to look like Kraftwerk when you're doing 100 Club or something like that. You learn to deal with it, and you take bits from it to put into the show. It's a juggling act sometimes, but I like it.
I suppose once bands know you've worked with other bands, it's kind of a bit of a snowball effect if you're the right person. Yeah,
you develop a good kind of reputation but nobody wants to tour with an arsehole, do they? You get a reputation for being good at your job and a good person to be around, make friends with people. That kind of the early 2000s, mid 2000s scene, everyone was just bouncing off each other as well. Like there'd be people like you'd be seeing other bands in airports and festivals all over the world, and end up at the same parties and stuff. And that's kind of how I got a lot of my early gigs, just from hanging out with people and saying, "Oh yeah, I'll do your lights tomorrow," and turning up at the festival. And it was interesting. But yeah, I guess a lot of people get their work from having a good reputation. And now it's all about having stuff on Instagram and making it look good online. I mean, that didn't exist back then.
Yeah, one thing we asked bands is whether they felt like it was a unique time back then in terms of, I don't know, having like a scene of bands. Are you saying there was a bit of a community of crew as well? Yeah.
I mean, all the crews that I kind of worked with kind of mixed around together and worked for different bands, and I'm still friends with loads of them now. Like they're all still going. Yeah, it was a good time. Like there was a lot of hanging out and fun, and just like when you're doing like a festival in Japan with like a bunch of your mates from all over the place, like you can't really beat that. It's amazing. It was a buzz.
Yes, yeah. I've obviously got to ask you. I suppose you might have to be a bit political about it, but who were your favourite bands from that time, just in terms of the music?
The music, it's always been Metronomy for me. I was into them from before I was doing any of this work. When Joe released his first album, I remember talking to him on MySpace actually, and then got pally with them and just ended up working with them ever since. They're my favourite band to have worked with. Just musically, like it works really well with the lights, the way the songs are structured, the fun element of it all, and they're lovely people. I've never really worked with a band whose music I didn't like, which has been great. Fortunate with that one. But Metronomy, definitely favourite. Klaxons as well, because they're my mates. Like to go on tour with like a mate you went to college with as well. Can't beat that.
Yeah, I bet their music lent itself well to licensing, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was good. it was a good. We did a show in Amsterdam on my birthday actually, and I remember we all did magic mushrooms before the show, and that turned out to be interesting. And we were in the tour bus afterwards, driving to Milan, I think it was. And I was stood at the back of the bus with Simon, kind of just tripping out a bit and having some fun. And the side bus of the door opened, and the bus driver was stood there, and I thought we were still moving. And I completely lost my mind. But we were at a petrol station. I guess you had to be there. But it was good fun. I just remember being out there with the Kooks, and we did a show with the Mystery Jets in Amsterdam, and everyone lost their mind that night. I think, yeah, it just happens. It's what you're going to do. You put a bunch of like 20-something English lads in the middle of Amsterdam. They put this festival on there called London Calling, where they could try and get as many British acts as they could. So it was always just a mad lineup of people going nuts.
Yeah, so like I was looking at your website, and like you say, like visually, it's just pretty stunning. To be fair,
Yes,
a lot of huge bands from that period. So I guess might just be a case of going through each one. Really, like what was it like working with the Maccabees? They're a good band to work with.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're amazing. I met them when the Delays did a Christmas show in Southampton. At the Guildhall, which is like a big, massive show for them. The Maccabees supported it, and I got friendly with them there, and kind of worked on and off with them, bits and bobs. And then when they did the Given to the Wild album tour, I did that whole one, which is my favourite album of theirs. And I was kind of involved with them a little bit after that, and then passed it on to my mate Phil, who did them till the very end. They're amazing. Top. I still work with Orlando now. I do his solo stuff when he does a few shows. They're great. Total legends.
You must have one of the best seats in the house, don't you, when you're doing your work?
Yeah, definitely right in the middle there. I sometimes feel bad that I'm blocking people's view behind me, but you've got to know what you're getting into if you stand behind the mixing desk. But I love it, yeah. It's you're right in the middle. You stood in the middle of an arena. It's completely full. Even a small club, just people crowded around you. Yeah, it's wicked. Hard not to take photos all the time when you're in the middle there. And I like it at the end, people come up and talk, and I try and give out set lists to people and stuff. And because when I was a kid going to gigs, I was always asking for set lists, and some roadies think it's weird, but I get it. Like you need a memento.
And yeah, I wanted to talk about Interpol, just because I noticed some of the lighting was very similar to, is it Turn on the Bright Lights album? Was that intentional, obviously?
Yeah, it's hard not to use that as an influence. Yeah, they're amazing. They're one of my favourite bands to work with. I still work with them now. I didn't work with them for a bit, and I went to one of their shows, and I was really let down by how it looked. So I was glad when they got me back in. Yeah, again, they're kind of really easy to work with because they trust me to do what I think is right. Paul has a few ideas every now and then. It was actually his idea to use a mirror ball on the last album tour, which turned out to be amazing. But I try and put mirror balls in everything. So he's right. He's talking my language. But they love mirror balls, lasers, smoke, and they don't like to be front lit, which saves me a headache.
The tour of the Bright Lights album, did you do that? Was it a few years ago?
I did the first time I worked with them was 2011. I did the self-titled album. And then they did El Pintor, and then they did the Turn on the Bright Lights reunion, and then they got me back in for the last album. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, they're amazing. They're just cool and fun, and their career are all great. And I love their music. I was going to their gigs when I was 19 years old. To work with Interpol and the Strokes is still like mind blowing, because I went to one of the Strokes' first gigs in the UK with Jamie when they played in Brighton in, I think it must have been 2000, because their album came out when we were working in that record shop. I remember Jamie came home one day actually about quite a few months before that and was like, "You've got to hear this," because Jamie was writing similar kind of music at the time, and they beat him to it. He was like, they've completely done it, and we were like, yeah. And then we were just obsessed with them. So to get an email off their manager one day out of the blue asking if I could do their lights, couldn't believe it. And then I think Daniel from Interpol recommended me to the Strokes. which is kind of weird to get my head around still. But that was fun as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
Yeah,
about the Strokes when I saw those on your website because it's pretty. I went to see them around that time. Was it 2011?
yeah,
And it's pretty iconic. The lights with the arrows. How
yeah.
did that idea kind of come around?
Well, I didn't actually design that. Look, I inherited it from the guy who did it before, but I think it was. I don't even know the story. I don't even know why they needed to use me instead of this guy. But when they got me involved, it was like, this is our design. Do what you want with it. So I kind of, because I saw that show a couple of years before in America, and it absolutely blew my mind because it looked amazing. Like everything was kind of working in time with the songs, but it wasn't your traditional rock show, was it? It was kind of like they had this video wall behind them, which did kind of low res, low bit graphics of video games and stuff. So I remember seeing it. I think it was a Lollapalooza in Chicago, and just the whole show just go, "Whoa, this looks fucking amazing!" And I went up and spoke to the lighting guy afterwards. I was like, "Dude." So then a year later, to be in control of it, I got to kind of refine it a little bit, mess around with it a little bit. I just couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it now that I did it. It was like 6 months of my life. I was just living the dream.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
Was that mainly festivals then, or did they do some smaller gigs as well?
it was pretty much all festivals apart from a couple of shows in Mexico, which were their own shows. But we headlined Reading and Leeds. My friend Rob does the lights for Pulp, so he saved me a button every night to press during Pulp's show. So technically I did their lights too. Yeah, I was still kind of finding my feet. I'd only been doing lights for 6-7 years properly, and I was still kind of new to it all. It was the first time I'd headlined all these festivals, and yeah, it was a big learning curve, that one, because I inherited the show which was already programmed on a different lighting desk I didn't really know how to use. So I had to learn all that, learn how the show had been programmed, because everyone programs their own shows differently, and then kind of reprogram it to suit my show, and then to fit it into all the festivals. And I got away with it. Just, I think, yeah, it was good. And then kind of, yeah, I guess that kind of just kicked me up the arse a bit and was like, right, come on, do this properly now. And it was about the time when Mumford & Sons started blowing up. I was already working with them, but in smaller venues. And then they went on to start doing arenas. So I was already kind of arena ready, if you like, festival headline ready.
Just one last one on the Strokes, like a bit of a geeky question, but do you get much interaction with the band itself?
A little bit, not really. They were always kind of on different flights or in first class, and so you didn't really see them there. And backstage, they didn't really turn up. I don't know what was going on, but Julian was kind of traveling differently to the rest of the band. So the band would turn up at the festival in the afternoon. Julian would turn up just before the show and then leave right after the show. But I got to know Fab pretty well. He was kind of always cool and hanging out. The other guys were always there and said hello, but Fab would always, make an effort. And when I lived in New York, it was around that time actually, I bumped into him quite a bit in New York and hung out a bit. And I remember I did a show with Arcade Fire in a small little club, and I saw a head bobbing up in the crowd before the show, just looking around, kind of like looking at me. I was like, hey man, come on. It was Fab. He came over and watched the show with me. So yeah, the other guys, they're all cool. I think I bumped into Julian on the last day in the airport, and he didn't even recognize me. But he's got his own way of doing it,
Yeah, from what you read, it sounds like they were going through a bit of a weird time. Was it Angles, that album?
Angles, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. They seem to have got it back together, which is cool.
Yeah,
I've seen them since, and they're all, seem like in a good place. But I think I prefer working with Interpol now. Interpol just keep releasing amazing albums as well. No offense to the Strokes, but I haven't heard their last album.
Just going back again to those early 90s, like you say, you were about 20 when, say, like Is This It came out.
Yeah, it was great being at university, just finishing university. I think I was 21 when Millennium turned over. Strokes, it was that time, wasn't it? It was just Strokes, White Stripes, Interpol, all kind of exploded at the same time. And yeah, we just went nuts for it. And then you had the UK versions of it. Had like, I'm sure you guys have already talked about it in depth in your other shows, but yeah, you had the Libertines and the Cribs and Arctic Monkeys later on, but it was amazing. Yeah, just going to see the Strokes. I've still got a pick Brighton gig. I think the Strokes played for about 25 minutes, if that, because that's all they had. And the Moldy Peaches was supporting them. They were also amazing band from New York. It was just a good time to be caught up in it all, and just to get swept away up with the music scene as a result of all that. It's just still kind of, still can't believe I do this for a job, and been doing it for 16 years or so, 17 years.
Yeah.
I'm a music fan. I get some people pay me to go to gigs. I'll take it.
I don't know, one of the bands that kind of changed things a little bit around the end of that scene were the XX who you worked with. I imagine they were, I mean, I never saw them live, but I assume lighting was a huge part of their show kind of thing.
Yeah, it was essential, yeah. They were supporting Florence and the Machine when I was doing Florence for our first album. And when they went on to do their own thing, they kind of asked me along. I did designed the first album tour for them. Yeah, it was all very kind of light and shadow based, nothing really going nuts, but doing the right things at the right time, following the drummer again, following the kind of the beat. They were interesting. They were great fun. I got a giant X made out of wood that just stood behind him, and we shot light through it from behind, and it was really effective. Simple. They went on to much bigger things, and they do some pretty extravagant productions these days. They do some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Mirrors that rotate and lasers and stuff. Yeah, they were great. Still love them.
I mean, I'm just listing bands here now, but MGMT, I mean, that looks like, I mean, their music must really lend itself well to kind of the psychedelic kind of imagery.
Yeah, there was, they just kind of, again, just let me do what I want and have fun. Have a little smoke before the show and just get stuck in. A video guy called Alejandro, who's like an amazing dude from New York. He's been their video guy for a long time. He still does all their live video, like the videos behind them while they're performing. And the first show I think was in Chile or something. And I've been programming Lights furiously all day, kind of like really a little bit nervous because I was a massive fan of them as well. And Alejandro came up to me right before the show and he's like, "Hey, have a smoke of this." And I was like, "What? Before the show? You crazy?" He's like, "Come on." And then he went side of stage to operate the video. And I was like, "How?" Oh, no, that was it. I said, like, "How are we going to communicate during the show if like you're on the side of stage and I'm at the front of the house in the middle doing the lights? We're supposed to be working together." He was like, "Just smoke this." And I had a smoke, and then he went back there and we did the show together. And after the show, it was just synergy. It worked.
Yeah, and I mean, we had Faris on from the Horizon. He was the last episode. And
love that man. I've done them. The first time I did them was around their first album. I don't know how I got into them, like working with them, but they were great fun. They love loads of strobes, lasers, smoke. They don't like to be front lit. They want me to just punish the crowd. Not so much, actually. They've gone a bit more clubby these days, and it's a bit more laid back. But yeah, I just love those guys. I'm still friends with them now. I remember I did Metronomy in Japan in 2014, and our show finished, and Horrors were playing later in the evening. So I stayed around the festival and did the Horrors lights, and then after the Horrors, Kraftwerk were on. So in 3D. So we all went back to the Horrors dressing room, got like pints of champagne, went to the main stage where Kraftwerk were playing, and we got into the middle of the crowd. And we all just watched this gig with our 3D glasses on. It was the best gig I've ever seen. Just a memory will always stick with me. And just seeing Faris stood in the middle of a Japanese audience. He's like 6'7" or something ridiculous. And Japanese tend to be, a bit shorter and as a nation. And he just stuck out, and everyone was just kind of looking at him like, wow. But they don't disturb you out there. They just really respect the show and let you enjoy it. And it was the best place to watch Kraftwerk because nobody was taking photos, nobody was talking, everyone was getting into it. It was amazing.
And I saw you did the Horrors, what looks like the Royal Albert Hall.
I designed it, but my friend John ended up operating it because my son was 2 weeks late being born. So I missed that show, unfortunately, thanks to Curtis. But John ended up operating it for me with my kind of lighting design. I'll never forgive my kid for that, by the way. I'll grudge for life.
Yeah, is there a venue that sticks out that you've worked at that kind of, I don't know, the most unique or the best experience?
Well, the Astoria, I did a lot of the first, big shows were at the Astoria. I went to a lot of shows at the Astoria when I was at school, so it was always kind of the place where you strive to play when you're a band. And I was the last person to do lights there as well, actually. I think it was 2005, maybe 6. I think it was 2010, actually. Yeah, because Sam Get Where Cape Fly put on the last show there. And I ended up doing the lights for it. But yeah, that was always amazing. I did the little merch stand at the back was a little wooden door that you had to sell out of. It wasn't planned very well. The lighting sound booth was a giant kind of bullet-shaped cage. It just stank. It was disgusting. It just stank of piss and jizz and whatever else. When you turn up in the morning to put a show in, the crew there were all just fucking crazy. And they'd load all the gear in and out of the back on a pulley, and then you'd end up having to push it round onto the Charing Cross Road, onto your bus through like a Saturday night London crowd. I saw someone get stabbed out there once in the middle of it all. But it was just great. It was just like when you're, in your mid-20s with a beer in your hand pushing a flight case through London. It's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. And
it was just a great venue to watch a show. They don't make them like that anymore. There's still loads of great venues, obviously, but that was the one. Brixton Academy, obviously, is still amazing. The Forum, Shepherd's Bush Empire, they're all legendary venues. The Roundhouse, to a certain extent. And loads all over the place. France has got loads of cool little venues, and Germany and European clubs. And oh God, I miss it. Fuck.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about kind of the difference between doing like a band's own tour and a festival. Like a festival must be pretty manic in terms of switching in and switching out kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. You have to plan ahead for that. You can't just turn up. You've normally, unless you're headlining, you've normally got about half an hour to get everything on the stage and ready and working, ready for the show. So yeah, I've made a few mistakes in that scope before, but you kind of need to be prepared. If you're headlining, it's great. You more often than not rock up the night before, once the headliners the night before have finished. And like Glastonbury, I did with Mumford & Sons in 2013, the Rolling Stones were headlining the night before. So I watched them, then they finished. I went straight up on the stage. We started loading in our stuff as they were loading their stuff out. And then you start programming overnight. I think I was finished at about 6 a.m. And then your stuff's just pushed to the back. And then when you get your changeover, it's rolled back out. And it should just work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You don't want to screw your changeover time over, and you don't want to screw the band on afterwards you over either.
Headlining Glastonbury, like doing the lights for that must have been, would you say that was a highlight of your career?
That was the highlight of my career, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. My parents took me to Glastonbury when I was 15, 14, in 95, when it was headlining that year. Peter Gabriel, Johnny Cash. No, it was 94 actually. Yeah, Oasis played, but I didn't see him. I wasn't that cool then. I think I went to see Apache Indian, Spin Doctors. So when I've done it quite a lot. I've been every year since 98, up until a couple of years ago when I started having kids, and it's all out the window. But I got my mum in that year in 2013. So she came on the morning of the Rolling Stones, which was the Saturday morning. She came and hung out with me and my mates, and she got stuck in. She watched the show with me by the lighting desk for Mumford show, and it was amazing. Yeah, it was great. One thing they don't tell you when you're lighting with band at Glastonbury on the main stage is that you can't see the stage because, well, I think they've changed the setup now, but back then the front of house tent had your sound and your lighting in it and the video cameras and everything. It was right in the middle, but it was at the same level as the stage, if not a little lower. So there'd be all the people in front, and then it'll be all the flags. So you couldn't.
Right.
By the time boys came on for our show, I couldn't see them through the flags. So I had to watch a monitor of the live TV feed, which was next to me, to judge it. I got away with it because your show's all pre-programmed by then anyway. You should know your show inside out if you're up to that level. So kind of could have done it with my eyes shut. I didn't want to. Kind of had to. I know my lighting desk crashed during one song. Everything froze, and I had Adam, my lighting, who's my like one of my best mates, who's also my kind of right hand man. He makes everything work for me, and we switched over desks in the middle of a song. I don't think anyone noticed at all, and we pulled it off.
Excellent.
Yeah, I love it.
So you're saying about the pre-programmed thing. So basically, you go into every show with it pre-programmed, and you kind of just overseeing it at that point.
Ideally, yeah. It depends on the tour and the band, how much time you get in advance to get it ready. Some bands you just hit the ground running and you're playing catch up from the start of the tour. But if you're doing an arena tour, you tend to get a bit more time in advance in pre-production, where you'd set the gig up in a studio or another venue or something, and just spend a week, ideally, or two, programming it, the band rehearsing, you getting the show together. The last Mumford & Sons tour we did was they had this giant stage custom built and all kinds of shit, and we spent a month in a rehearsal space getting it ready. That was hard work, but it was worth it in the end because it looked amazing. But I wouldn't want to. Yeah, sometimes I like just making it up as I go along as well. Sometimes come up with your best ideas when you're kind of working off the cuff.
Was that what it was like in the early days?
Oh yeah. With the delays, the first tour with the delays, it was just you turn up and you use whatever the venue you've got. So whatever their lighting rig was, whatever their lighting desk was. I had an idea of what I wanted to do during each song, and you just had to kind of do your best to make it happen. But as tours get bigger and bands get more money to spend, you get a bit more of a say in what you bring with you and stuff. I guess the first band where I designed the show as a full show was the Kooks in 2006 when they started doing. We did the Astoria and Shepherd's Bush Empire and the Forum 3 nights in a row, that kind of size tour.
Cool.
Other than that, yeah, it all depends. CSS, we just took balloons with us everywhere. Just fucking blew up loads of balloons and had the backdrop up, and that was it. We just go nuts with that. Mogwai were on before us once, and this was before I was working with them, and I was blowing up balloons behind the stage, and their tour manager had to come around and tell me off. He's like, "We can fucking hear you blowing up balloons on stage," because they've got some really quiet moments. So what's that is in the background. Just, what the fuck's going on?
And yeah, I noticed you've worked with some massive pop people as well. Like you've worked with like Lily Allen. How does that differ from your other shows, or is it pretty similar?
Well, when I worked with Lily, it was her last album. She had kind of wanted to kind of shun all that kind of pop vibe. She'd been kind of misrepresented via live shows, she thought, and she didn't want to be a pop star like that anymore. She kind of thrown off all the shackles that she had, and she wanted to be a bit cooler and different and fun at the same time. So we worked together on creating a kind of a light show with no video that looked interesting, but also gave her the freedom to perform. She still wanted to roam around and dance. And I worked with Blue May, who's an old friend of mine, who he became a kind of musical creative director, and he got me involved in it. It was like, listen, we want to do this differently and present her in a way that you wouldn't expect to see Lily Allen. And it worked really well. The shows were great. She's great fun. She's cool. She was easy. She just kind of let us get on with it and trusted our ideas, and yeah. And her last album was brilliant. Some really good tunes on it. I did a show for Shakira actually in New York City. I don't know how I got that. I don't know. Someone just got in touch, was like, "Hey, listen, Shakira's doing this massive show in Bryant Park. do you want to do it? I was like, fucking hell, okay. And it just turned out to be a massive shit show. It was just kind of loads of lasers, loads of pyrotechnics and video. And I think it was sponsored by T-Mobile, like a massive mobile phone company. And they wanted all the songs to be purple. And I just kind of, there was a lighting director, Nick Whitehouse, who I've worked with previously for a bit, who was kind of just like, yeah, just go for it. See what you can do. And it was just, it was a mess. There was just shit everywhere all the time. But it was fun.
Yeah, it's like a picture of a big skull thing. Was that just on a screen?
Yeah. Like there was no. The best way to do a show is for everyone to work together. If the video people, the lighting, the designers of the stage, the lasers, the effects, everyone should be working together on the show to make it work cohesively without everything going off at all the same time. But with this one, it was just a massive pylon. I walked out of that gig afterwards. I literally just finished the show and went to the pub and then got the train home. And that was that. It was, as I enjoyed it. Got to do lights for Shakira. Sounds cool.
Yeah, that picture of the whole park looks mad as well.
It's the park from Ghostbusters, being in the Ghostbusters, and they're walking out the library.
All right. Yeah, I guess we've got to talk about COVID and everything. Like, obviously, I've read quite a few things about how, crew staff have been affected by the pandemic. Like, how have you found it, and do you think there's been enough support for people?
There hasn't been enough support for freelancers, which most roadies are. They've basically got next to nothing, as well as of a lot of freelancers all over. It's been crazy for that. At first it was a bit of a panic, but a lot of them have got jobs as delivery drivers or putting up advertising boards, videos and stuff like that. The thing with roadies, right, is they're probably the most creatively, technically advanced race of people. Like, they could do anything. They could put festivals on. They can build a show in 30 minutes on a stage. They can put festivals on in the middle of nowhere. They can put shows on, crazy shows. All these people are amazing at what they do. And their skills could have been used to a lot more of an extent in other stuff. But yeah, they'll always find something else to do. And they have. They've been, used their initiative. So roadies will be all right, I think, on the whole. Not all of them have been, obviously. But for some of them, for me personally, I didn't tour. I kind of gave up full-time touring in 2016 when I started to, just have a family and design shows more. I would design shows and send people out rather than going and doing all the shows myself. But if I was reliant on touring, then yeah, Christ, it's been a wake-up call. Some people needed a break, let's be honest. Some people have kind of decided that touring isn't for them in the future. Some of them just can't wait to get back to it. And it's going to be amazing when everyone gets back into it. But I think at the same time, there's going to be every band wanting to tour at the same time. I'm not even sure if there's going to be enough crew to fulfill that. We'll see. It depends how they all kind of stagger their touring. But yeah, for me personally, it's been all right. I can't complain. I've got another job. I run a record shop and a cafe. So that's kind of been open and closed a bit. We've still been selling records online. I've been just this past few months, I've started working on stuff that's happening later in the year. But most of it has I've just been hanging out with my kids and my missus and just enjoying that without trying to prang out too much. Because yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle money wise. Had to make it work like everyone else. Everyone's in the same kind of shit. So,
is your record shop in Margate?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just up the road. Pete Doherty comes in quite a bit and buys a few records.
Cool.
Creates a bit of a whirlwind and then runs out. The Libertines story, actually, like when me and Jamie used to live together in Southampton, we were big into the Libertines on their first album. We went to see them at the Joiners in Southampton, which is like a tiny little 200 capacity venue. And Pete and Carl ended up coming back to my house after the gig. We had a little party and Pete kind of set fire to my back garden and was stealing all my neighbour's garden furniture and burning it up. And me and Carl and were hiding behind seats because he was chucking fucking like lighter fluid into the fire and it was exploding. And it was a fun night. And it got in the enemy the week later. And then Jamie's ended up hanging out with them a lot more than I have ever since. And he's been working with them and stuff. But I had my shop in Margate and they all came in one day when they were first kind of scoping the area out. And Carl came up to the counter and I served him. I was like, remember me? You set fire to my back garden in Southampton. He went, no. Pete set fire to your back garden. And then obviously I see them quite a bit now all the time and they're always around town. So it's pretty funny to be living around the corner from them after all that happened back then.
Yeah.
Serendipitous, like it.
We usually ask people for a Gallagher Brothers one, but I think that'll do.
Gallagher Brothers one, yeah. I've bumped into Noel a couple of times, but just to get a picture with him. Actually, no. I think I bumped into Liam backstage at Reading when they headlined it. And I was like, oh, because it was around the time they were going to split up. And I was like, oh, Liam, don't split up Oasis, man. Come on, I was at Nebworth and you just can't split up. And he just went, fucking hell, man, we're not fucking going anywhere. We're the greatest band in the world. Fucking. I was just sitting there going, whoa, you just said that to me. That's about it. I'm just a fanboy of theirs.
Well, you were in Nebworth, that's pretty ace. Was it as good as as good as it looked?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was incredible. I was lucky enough to kind of not get down front, but in the second pit. I was quite near the front of that. I don't know how I survived all day. I went with my mate Glenn and we didn't leave our spot from the moment we got in. Didn't eat anything. There was someone walking around selling cartons of Five Alive, like we drank that. If we'd have tried to go to the pub or the bar or anything like that, we'd never have got back because we didn't have phones or anything as well.
Yeah.
Pre-mobile phones. So yeah, we just kind of, it was amazing though. And like all the bands were brilliant. And then after the Oasis finished, we got back to Glenn's car and there was a burger van in the car park and we bought 5 burgers each, ate them, fell asleep in his car, woke up at 5 a.m. and there was still like a massive traffic jam to get out. Yeah, it was great. I've got loads of photos from it that, that have been developed and they're all awful pictures, but yeah, it's great. And then the guy who directed their screens, Dick, what's his name? Dick, I can't remember. Dick something. He ended up shooting a Mumford & Sons concert in South Africa a few years ago. And I ended up chatting with him about that. He's done a lot of Oasis stuff and he had a few stories about him and that. It was really cool.
Oh, cool, yeah. I remember they used to have a lot of visuals playing in the background for their gigs.
Yeah, the live design's always been a bit questionable. But
what's the third album called? Be Here Now.
Yeah.
It's quite a strange setup.
Yeah, I saw that at Wembley when they had the phone box and the clock that was ticking backwards, and I didn't care though. Who cares, right? Nowadays, if I go and watch a show that I love and they've got a really bad light show, I can't handle it. It ruins the show for me. So I'm kind of cursed. But fortunately, that doesn't really happen much anymore. I don't really go to shows anymore. But I saw Supergrass last year, one of the last shows before lockdown at Alexandra Palace, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
But that's a pretty cool venue to work at as well.
Not really. Well, I did Idols there recently. I've done quite a lot of shows there, but I did Idols there recently, and it's just a big white room. And unless the band pays, I think it's something like 15 grand, they won't drape off the room with black drapes. And a lot of bands don't want it to be draped off anyway because it looks like it's a cool place. Like it's got a massive stained glass window. It looks incredible. That's a vibe. But unless you spend a lot of money to drape it off, you don't really get a good sound or a proper kind of gig in there, like lighting gig. I'm sure most people have a great time there, but from a productions side of things, it's not ideal.
And I guess one last one would be, how do people get into your line of work? Like you say, you kind of, I don't know, like you took your opportunity when it came your way kind of thing, but is there a more structured path for people?
You could study it. You could study live production. There's quite a lot of universities that teach it now, live design and production. You could, get in at a local venue, start talking to them, get a job, even if it's collecting glasses at first, and get to know the people who work there and, work your way in like that. You could harass people like me asking for work experience. I get quite a lot of people asking, and I always try and accommodate youngsters or people trying to get their way into the gigs by getting people along to come along for a show for a day and watch how it works. Contact lighting designers, asking for advice, lighting manufacturers. There's plenty of ways in. I would say the best way is to get a job at a local venue. And bands pass through all the time, and you could get to do a band might come who don't have a lighting person with them, and you do their lights, you give them your card at the end, and they might, it might be the next big thing. You never know. They might give you a call when they need someone. Just take opportunities and get yourself about a bit and be nice.